My name is Alan Nelson. I've been an advocate in South Africa for the past 35 years, the last 20 as a senior advocate or a Queen's Counsel. And I've run many cases in the Supreme Court, the lower courts in South Africa. In fact, it's been my passion to litigate matters until a few years ago when I discovered mediation. And what follows is a mediation role play of a matter that was heard before various courts in South Africa. In fact, there were 7 different court hearings in relation to this particular matter, which ultimately found its way to the Supreme Court of Appeal in South Africa, and at which stage the court gave judgment in favour of the plaintiff in an amount of 350,000 rands, which is the equivalent of 35,000 euros, or perhaps a little bit less these days. The matter resulted in a complete breakdown of the relationship between the plaintiff and the defendant, who had been relatively close friends for many years before the dispute between them arose. The litigation I investigated cost the parties, in terms of legal costs, an amount of at least 1.5 million rand, of which about 55% would not have been recoverable by the plaintiff because of the manner in which people's costs are taxed. But in addition to that, apart from the legal fees directly incurred, both of the participants to this dispute were professional people. The one was a medical doctor and the other an accountant. And on estimate, both of these people, in terms of the time that they spent prior to the dispute and during the dispute, preparing for the various court hearings and ultimately being called to testify, spent, in terms of professional hours, a far greater period of time than the legal costs. So one would be looking at a matter that costs them both in the equivalent of about 3 million rand. And if you do the sums, the cost of the mediation as a percentage of that would have been approximately 0.17%. I repeat that, 0.17% is what the mediation would have cost had these parties mediated the matter. The tragedy here is I did investigate with the successful plaintiff in a consultation after this case was over whether his legal advisor had ever mentioned mediation to him, and he told me that his lawyer had not done so. In fact, he didn't understand the procedure, had no idea what the process was about, and explained to me also that if a mediation had been explained to him, then the outcome of that mediation would have been not very different to that which this particular role play shows you can be achieved through mediation. The end result of the court case was it lasted for 11 years. As I've said, the relationship between the doctor and his erstwhile patient was completely destroyed. Both of their dreams of establishing a long-term business model and spreading it throughout South Africa and the rest of Africa was destroyed. The company went bankrupt, and I have very grave doubts that the successful accountant even managed to recover his capital sum of 350,000 rand and any of the costs that he incurred. As opposed to that, we invite you to look at this role play and to see for yourselves what the outcome of this dispute would have been if the parties had mediated.